Well, thank you, choir, for leading us in song this morning. Just shift that a little in case I get all charismatic up here and bump it over. When you have a precious thing, you want to be careful who you give it to. Like when my cousin asked to see Lisa's engagement ring before I gave it to her. So back in the day, Lisa and I had all the wealth and all the resources that you would expect from two people when one had just graduated university and the other had just graduated college. But after dating for a few years, I knew it was time to pop the question. So I picked a date and I picked an occasion. It would be a surprise, so now I only needed the ring. Now, when you're talking about gold and diamonds, the price tag climbs pretty fast, but Lisa is not an extravagant person. Part of my attraction to her is that she has a real good practical head on her shoulders. And it's cute, too. But I still want a proper ring that would be both tasteful and special. So I looked and looked, I shopped and shopped, I consulted the women in my life, my mom, my sister, some of Lisa's friends. Finally, I made a decision. It was a ring that would not win any prizes, but had a few unique characteristics. Instead of one big diamond, it had three. The center one was a bit larger and two, one on either side. The center one because in marriage, the two become one. And the band, it was not ordinary, flat, smooth gold. It was in a weave pattern, not like a rope, but laid out as though it looked like the gold was weaved together. I was proud of my find. I was proud of my research. I was proud of my scheme to present this ring to her in a little bouquet of flowers when I took her out for dinner. That's how I was going to propose. And I was excited to have it all planned and kept it a secret the whole time. And the day I picked up the ring, I couldn't stop looking at it. Wow, this was really happening. I'm going to ask her to marry me, and this little thing that I have and that I got is precious because it's a valuable little symbol of our love. And I kept it in this box, and through the day, I would open the box and take a peek, and then close the box again. And all through the day, kept opening the box, take a look, and close the box again. I went to my best friend's house, opened the box, showed him the ring, and was all proud and closed the box. I showed my mom, showed my sister, I showed all these, and everybody was gushes of congratulations the whole day long. Then my cousin came over. Now, I love my cousin, one of my favorite people in the whole world, but my cousin is prone to accident. If 5 people go cliff diving in Georgian Bay, it's my cousin who's going to pop an eardrum. If 5 people are reaching for a stringer full of fish under the dock, it's my cousin who's going to get bit by the snapping turtle that's unseen. Both of those things happened to him, and a lot more other things too. So he had a bit of a reputation. So when he asked to see the ring, I said, well, you already saw it. I showed it. I opened the box, I showed it to you, and you've seen it. No, give it to me. No way. You, my friend, are going to drop it. He says, no, I won't. Yes, you will. And we went back and forth like that for a little while. You're going to drop it. No, I won't. Yes, you will. No, I won't. Yes, you will. Then I thought, well, maybe I've made enough of a big deal about it that he will take it seriously and actually be careful with the ring. So I told him, put out your hand. This is what I do when I do weddings as well. I always hand the rings over. By making the bride or the groom, they put their hand out flat. And when I give them the ring, I take the ring and I put it flat in their palm so that we don't fumble it, fiddling around with our fingers, giving the ring to one another. So I said to my cousin, put out your hand. And he did. And then he placed the ring very carefully into his palm. And then with me right there, right beside him, watching every agonizing moment that followed, he grabbed the ring out of the palm of his hand and proceeded exactly right now to drop it. And boom, it tumbled on the floor and rolled off. Down it went, and you know when you drop a quarter onto the floor, how it doesn't just sort of land in one spot, it just sort of keeps rolling around until it finally it calms down and falls over. Well, the ring, it gave a couple bounces, which I don't know jewelry very well, but I don't think that's probably very good for a ring. So it gave a couple bounces, then did a little bit of rolling on this hardwood parquet flooring, and then it finally came to a stop. And that's what my cousin said, and I'll never forget his one-word response. He reached down to pick up the ring, and he said, "Oops." Oops. That's all you have to say for yourself is oops. In the end, it was fine, but it gave me pause as to who I could and should trust with my most precious of treasures. And of course, our Bible passage today has nothing to do with gold or diamonds or proper care of jewelry. Rather, it centers on what is possibly the most important commodity that we have, and that's our children. In Matthew 19, 13 to 15, which Grant read for us earlier, I'll read it again. Matthew 19, 13 to 15 says this: "Then children were brought to Jesus that he might lay his hands on them and pray. The disciples rebuked the people, but Jesus said, 'Let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven.' And he laid his hands on them and then went away." So Jesus had enough of a reputation at this point in his story that people were bringing their children to him so that he might bless them, laying his hands likely on their head or on their shoulder, praying for each child. Now, this evokes images of Isaac's blessing upon his son, Esau, in the Old Testament. It came with all the weight and authority of handing down the headship of his household to his eldest son. The problem in that story is Esau didn't get the blessing, right? Who did? Jacob, his brother, deceived their father and ended up with that whole blessing and all the riches that came with. The blessing of Jesus upon the children in the New Testament, though, had no weight of transferring ownership of assets. Rather, it was the simple goodwill of a roaming teacher in the lives of children, a common practice in that day. But the disciples saw it as a distraction. Jesus was a busy guy. He had important matters to attend to. He had miracles to perform. He had enemies to vanquish. At least that's how the disciples perceived what Jesus was there to do. He was going to vanquish their enemies. But children were just in the way of all this important work. They can't contribute anything. Children, they have no skill, they have no resources, they have no position. All they're good for is sending away to be educated until they reach an age of majority, and then they can be of some use. So the disciples, they were happy just to shoo the children away. But Jesus recognized something special in the children. The kingdom belongs to such as these, he said. What makes the children fit for the kingdom? In fact, what in the children should be mimicked in adults to make adults fit for the kingdom? And it's humility. Children are humble. They are weak. They have yet a lot to learn. They cannot take care of themselves. They need protecting. They need care. And they need an authority to trust. From parents or foster parents or adoptive parents or whatever other family member is raising them, children need that supervision. And some of those very parents brought their children to Jesus so that his blessing might rest on them. Those parents took this precious commodity and entrusted their children to Jesus. Now, recently in church growth circles, there have been many books written under the moniker of the emergent church. The emergent church movement comes out of church growth thought. And the thinking goes like this. Why are some churches not growing? So this conversation goes back to the 70s, the 1980s and 90s. Why are some churches not growing? And why are some churches, in fact, shrinking? Why is Christianity on the decline, especially in Europe and North America? And the emergent church movement is seeking answers to these questions in hopes of finding a solution. They are trying to turn the ship around. And one of the thoughts is that the modern church had become too focused on rules. And an emerging emphasis has been that we need less rules in the church and more relationship. The church needs to be more about relationship than rules, they'll say. It's the core criticism of the modern church that this group has. For example, kids growing up in the 50s and 60s, if they were part of a Christian household, might come across a rule like you can't go fishing on Sunday. Is that a rule any of you have had to have experienced and kind of grew up in that environment? You can't go fishing on Sunday. And the list of what you can't do on Sunday becomes very long, right? Because it's shopping, all sorts of things. The list is long, what you can't do on Sunday, because it's a set-aside day, and it become a rule in the church. And you can't go to school dances at any time, not just on Sundays. You ever come across that kind of a rule in church circles? Dances, stay away from dances, and you have to dress a certain way if you want to go to church. There's all these rules, and the emergent church goes pretty hard in their accusations of those people who made up those rules. Those rules aren't in the Bible, they'll say, and those rules are just a burden to a whole generation of Christians, and they're completely unnecessary.